Lord John Fisher of Cleverstone, who was appointed Admiral of the Navy in 1904, felt the need to modernize the British fleet and was supported in this project by the Assistant Secretary of State for the Colonies, Winston Churchill. Through the former Lord Mayor of London, Marcus Samuel, and through the English Rothschilds, Lord Fisher met with Henry Deterding and decided from then on to support Deterding in his secret struggle against Rockefeller. And in 1910, the British Navy switched from coal to diesel. In 1914, the Royal Dutch Company was the main producer of Romanian petroleum, which it continued to send to Germany via the Danube, which angered the British government, so Henry Deterding replied, "I am Dutch. Shell is a multinational company. The Netherlands is a neutral country. I can help you in England, but I can't do anything about what is decided in the Lahai, a neutral country." The British reluctantly agreed. It should be noted that Deterding promised to supply them with petroleum as well, in quantities that exceeded what he was sending to the Germans. Shell supplied both camps, but the British Navy never lacked for diesel. The French had other reasons to complain, because the Americans had been supplying the Germans with petroleum since the beginning of the war. To avoid the dangers of submarine warfare, companies shifted most of their tankers from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Until the United States entered the war in 1917, the companies did not hesitate to supply German ships in the South Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. The Russian oil king was Emanuel Nobel, who was born in 1859 from a father named Louis, the inventor of these wells, and the nephew of Alfred Nobel, the inventor of dynamite. And when he turned 28 in 1887, he replaced his father. Then he soon obtained Russian citizenship and devoted himself to organizing distribution across Russia. Nobel obtained his lands in 1873 as Tsar Alexander II gifted his prime minister, Count Pavel Ignatiev, as well as some of his ministers, ownership papers for some lands in the petroleum region in Baku, and it is said that this gift did not like the ministers very much. The rest of the lands were seized by the Tsar, and in 1873 he put them up for sale in the Tiflis market, where the auction helped sell all the lands at a good price of 6 million gold rubles. Most of the buyers were Armenians, Tatars, and Caucasians, and no one among the buyers at the time noticed the presence of two Swedish brothers living in St. Petersburg, Robert and Louis Nobel. In 1874, the Nobel brothers began investing in their land, and in 1875, their first refinery began operating in Baku, where they acquired a large garage for wagons and tanks and monopolized transportation from Baku to the Baltic Sea. After the explosion of the revolution in Russia, Emanuel Nobel took refuge in Baku in the Caucasus, then went to Rostov, then to the German lines, where he was received by an honor guard and transported to Germany. After the nationalization of Russian petroleum companies without any compensation, Emanuel Nobel sold his rights, which represent 40% of Russian oil, to Walter Teagle, head of Exxon, in July 1920 for $11.5 million. The other 60% of his shares, which were distributed among many partners, including Deterding and the Rothschilds in France, were subjected to intense international speculation. In 1920, the Bolsheviks, who had come to power 3 years earlier, nationalized oil in their country. Deterding was seized with great anger and revolt, as his rights to Russian oil were estimated at 420 million gold francs, and he was not the type to accept defeat easily. Therefore, Deterding conducted anti-communist press campaigns globally, issued fake rubles to flood the Russian treasury, organized plots, intrigues, and espionage operations, and provided money and weapons for the rebellion in Georgia to the White Russians. Deterding formed a formidable petroleum alliance against the Soviets, as well as an army and a fleet with a special currency for Mr. Wrangel, who was tasked with reclaiming his country's lands and liberating it from the communists. Admiral Kolchak was given massive aid for the same purpose. When Hitler was preparing to invade France in early 1940, English and French generals were considering bombing the Baku wells in Soviet Azerbaijan by air from French bases in Syria. The Germans got their hands on the documents relating to the operation at Charité-sur-Loing and naturally rushed to publish them. The most amazing thing is that none of those responsible for the preparation of this aggressive plot were harassed. In October 1962, for some unknown reason, the plane of Enrico Mattei, a man who declared a fierce war against the Anglo-Saxon monopolies, crashed over Italy in a storm. Enrico Mattei was a source of annoyance to many, as he had established continuous contacts with the Algerians during the Algerian Revolution, and he always threatened to expose certain matters and facts. And because he proposed compensation of 80% instead of the 50% usually granted to oil owners in the Near East, the doors of investment in this region were closed to him permanently. Finally, in 1960, he reduced the selling price of a liter of gasoline in Italy by 5 lire, forcing his competitors to do the same.